Welcome to another Figure Week, Hard Surface Week, Organic Week.
Hey everyone, my name is Ahmed Al-Douri. I'm a concept artist and former instructor at Art Center College of Design, Brainstorm, CCS, CGMA, and various other places. And I would like to introduce to you this digital painting course that I've created. But before we get into anything, I just want to thank you for the support you've all given me this whole time. And with the support of so many of you, I've been able to put together everything I know about painting into this digital painting course. You want to become a pro illustrator, concept artist, or even just a hobbyist, but you don't have a clear map to get there. And that's where I come in. I spent the last 6 months compiling everything I know from my 20 years of art practice, and I've turned it all into a map. Starting with foundations such as rendering shapes, color theory, painting basic subjects, understanding brushwork, brush economy, all that fun stuff, deconstructing the skull, drawing it from every angle, all the way to master studies, stylized painting, and you'll find yourself at the end of the course doing a concept art project based on everything that we learn in the first 14 lessons. So how does it work? Well, you sign up, you watch the lectures, do the assignments, post them to the community page if you want, and treat it as a self-study, except for those of you who have signed up for the weekly meeting, where I personally critique your work in a virtual classroom setting. I believe learning by repetition is super important. That's what I've sort of presented a lot in this course, and the assignments are tailored for that, as adapted from my time teaching at Art Center. And each of these lessons have step-by-step explanations in real time. If you've ever seen my videos, you know exactly how I teach. And this course is intended to be a substitute for a college level course, but you don't have to pay the $4,000 or $5,000 per class, racking up maybe $200K in debt. With my custom design course, you'd be paying a fraction of that. And of course, I also have payment plan options if you don't want to pay for the whole thing at once. Thank you for watching this, and I'll see you soon.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Digital Artcast. Thanks again for joining another episode. It's always great to have you guys here, listening, tuning in from wherever you are in the world. And of course, as I always say, I hope from wherever you're listening from, you're staying safe, and of course, you're being creative. I'm glad that you have taken time to listen to us. I always hope that these podcasts and these conversations help you relax and just chill out and have some background noise while you're doing whatever you're doing. And great again to have another episode and to keep going. And you know, the last couple of years have been a bit crappy, but hopefully we're heading towards a bit of normality now, and people are getting back on their feet, and the world is getting back on its feet. So good times coming. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. Again, for anybody who's joined the Discord recently and put in comments about future guests or anybody that you suggested, again, as always, I'm taking those seriously, and I'm trying to track down the names and people that you're trying to want to get onto the podcast. So thanks for leaving those comments. If you guys check down below in links, you can find the Discord address, and you can join in there if you want to do any feedback sessions or post any of your work, or even just talk about the podcast. I'm always happy to chat about what I do. And of course, we have the Patreon as well now. Many other links that you can check out for different courses, and they are all down in the description. Today, we have another great guest, someone that we've tried to go on for a while now, and just with scheduling as always, it's a bit difficult, but finally got him on to talk about his career in the games industry specifically, and of course within the realm of 3D art. Today we have on Mr. Tim Diaz. So hi Tim, how's it going?
Gordon Neal. Mr. Gordon. Good to see you, man. It's been a while.
Welcome in. So we've been trying to schedule and organize and get this up and running, but you're a busy man these days, man. You're chomping along, working hard. So yeah.
But speaking of which, man, like I know, like with the time difference and everything, like I know it's probably super late on your side of the screen. So I definitely appreciate you probably staying up way past your bedtime. So
no, we're good here. It's not too bad. It's about 6 p.m. So we're fine here. But like, I mean,
cool.
Yeah, it's not ridiculous. But yeah, as I was saying to you before we started recording, thanks to you for coming on and taking time. I know you're obviously super busy with work and life in general. So yeah, I'm glad you're on. So
no, and especially too with your podcast, like I've been rewatching like a lot of them just to prepare for this and just seeing how natural it is and just like, man, this is actually really cool. Like it's like I'm really glad you're doing this, and like I hope like more people like get the word about it and start watching and just hearing other people's backgrounds and their stories. Like it's really cool to hear. Everyone has a story. Super cool. So
I mean, like somebody kind of pointed out the other day. I think I spoke about this in the podcast before about how I'm only maybe like one of maybe like 3 or 4 people who's doing hardcore industry stuff. Like we're talking to people in industry at the highest echelon of what they're doing. You know, the people I've had on like Scott Robertson and Esben and Mache and just loads of other people that have Glauco. People who have kind of climbed the highest peak and have got to the top and talk about their stories and their beginnings. And and we get emails from students around the world who are like, "Yo, dude, like your stuff's really inspiring me." And like, the guy who like left his job when he turned 30 to go back to school because he was inspired by my journey. So yeah, it's a whole thing, and I'm glad that I'm really just thankful for people who enjoy what I do and want to listen. So yeah, to those guys, thank you. So, but no, thank you again, Tim, for just the compliments, because it's just nice to hear. I think it's just affirming when people acknowledge what I'm doing. So yeah,
and especially too, man. Like I mean, you're working on the hustle, man. I mean, you're working on your own craft. You're doing a lot of networking. You're putting your feet to the pavement. Talking to people, going to events. Just making contacts, man. Just seeing where everybody's at and like just getting a feel for where we are. Like even back then, like listening to some of your stuff talking about the horses, unicorn like stuff. Like just meeting those people. Traveling all over the world and just it's a big deal for a lot of people, especially too because just even before the pandemic, it was just hard just to get out, especially like finances and stuff, and you got to make. If you're going to go out that far, you got to buy passports, you got to get tickets, traveler's insurance, visas. Oh, yeah, dude. And it's brutal, man. It's tough.
When I went to Lightbox, that was a whole thing getting is it the S-PAT or the S-CAT? It's one of the things where you get the international visa. You can go to America for, I think it's valid for a year, but you can go, I think like 30 days on a trot to the US. But you had to get that all arranged before I went to LA, and that was a bit of a headache. But such as international travel, it's one of these things you just need to handle, but it was worth it.
Yeah.
People I got to meet, I got to not finally meet up with Raf, because I met Raf Gazzetti at THU. That's how we first met. But then got to catch up with him and Della and a couple of the people at Sony Santa Monica. Got my book signed, and got to tour Blizzard, got to tour Riot, like those places. So I mean, that was just a great trip in general. But it's good because you're planting seeds in people's minds. And I brought everybody souvenirs from Scotland, so I've got them on their desks. Every time they look in their desk, they're like, "Oh, yeah, I remember Gordon." So it's always a good thing just to leave it all, leave behind. But yeah, like even traveling to THU was the same. You meet people there because they get such international travel as well, and workshops, IMAG. It's all my money when I was a student went on just going to events because I knew it was so important. But I now need to focus on the other half of that, which is work, and get the portfolio shiny. But then hopefully once it is shiny, I've got enough people in my network when I put it out into the world. People be like, hey, that's cool shit. Somebody hired him. Yeah, man, definitely. Okay, so enough about me. Talk about you. For people who don't know, we know you're Tim Diaz, but what are you currently doing in the world of art?
Yeah, so currently I'm at 343 Industries. Right now I am the lead campaign dungeon artist for Halo. And for anyone that's not aware of what that was, or if you haven't played the most recent Halo game, Halo Infinite, so we broke it down into 2 sections. So there's the ring, or the island world, which is more open. It's more open-ended. You can play however you want to play. And then we have more traditional Halo experiences, which we refer to them as dungeons. Right. So that's where, you're going into Forerunner areas, you're going into Banished, like areas and stuff like that, where it's more traditional Halo stuff, where you're going big room to big room, hallway to hallway, shoot, pew, pew, good old classic Halo fun. And then when you go to the ring, that's what we call like the island or the open world section. So we had leads for just maintaining the open world, which we call the interstitials. Yep. and then everything not interstitials was dungeons. So
Right. And that's where you come in, basically.
yeah, so for Halo Infinite, I was the lead for all the Forerunner experiences for campaign. So all the Forerunner dungeons within Halo Infinite, I was a lead or a co-lead with other members of our team, and we were just coming up with, how do we make this fun? How do we bring back the traditional Halo feel? And then like just add in the new sandbox elements that we wanted to put in. So it was really cool. So now I get to be the lead of more than just Forerunner stuff. So we'll see where that goes. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, exciting prospects, because I mean, 5 in a sense, I think. Well, first of all, like, congrats on Infinite launching. That must have been a huge milestone for you guys getting that out, obviously. But yeah, 5 definitely had came to a point where even when I played it, it felt like it was missing just an element that made Halo, and I think people did find there was a disconnect in the 5th one and the 4th one, and and 343, I think, were in an area where they were trying to rediscover what made Halo, and how to bring that finesse back. A lot of games have went through it, right? You know the only ones. There's plenty of studios who have had to, like, we talk about Breath of the Wild on this podcast a lot because I'm a huge Zelda fan, apart from Halo. But Nintendo struggled for a long, long time bringing that magic back to Zelda, and now obviously Breath of the Wild is a masterpiece, right? Because they just totally reinvented, brought it back to what it was the core of, what made Zelda. And for you guys in Master Chief, that was obviously a journey as well. I mean, you were working on a specific part of it, but like as a studio culture, you probably felt that was a whole thing you were all working towards, right? That kind of zoned in.
Yeah, especially too, like if you go back and listen to a lot of the interviews that a lot of the leads and directors were doing, like that was the main thing. It's because we took a lot of that stuff serious. Like there's a lot of people that say, don't read the comments. It's totally toxic and negative, but we have to, like, we have to read a lot of those. Like, and it's an art within itself to just wedge through, like, there's obviously just like mean spirited stuff that, it's very, very short, but it's not very helpful. But like, there's a lot of good constructive criticism and a lot of good constructive feedback. Like in a lot of those, you just have to go find them. And a lot of that stuff we do take seriously, and like, just like all of our leads were saying, like we wanted to go back, like what makes Halo special. So a lot of us, we just went back and let's just replay all the games again. Let's really like nail down these things and like
find the spark.
Yeah, like with the Game Informer interview that we did, like I was talking about my stuff, and like I played all the Halos all over again, like a couple times over. It was me and another artist, John Flath, and we were just hammering down like what makes this special, what makes Forerunner, and then looking back at all the old style guides, looking at all the older assets from that we were able to dig up. Because we do have all those games like archived, and then it's just unlocking the archive. Let's open it up. Let's see how they built it. Looking at their old tools, like what made Forerunner, and like how mathematical is it? Like when do we need to follow these guidelines to the T? When can we kind of be a little free floating about it? So no, it was really cool, man. It was super informative, and it's not that 4 and 5 didn't have that. It was just like a different way to bake something. So
yeah. I mean, it's like, even like a challenge again on top of everything you do, because even between 5 and Infinite, you were again jumping a console generation, so you were again even more next gen than the last one. So building for Series X, of course, and
it was cool too because we were still staying with Xbox One, because we didn't want to leave those people behind.
Of course.
Like there's a lot of people that have Xbox Ones, and especially with just how the world is right now, like a lot of people a lot of people can't afford the newer stuff. So and we wanted to make sure no one got left behind. So it was really cool just to sit back and be like, how can we push this thing to the brink? Like how can we really push Xbox One to
as far as it'll go.
And then like with that, like how do we bring new stuff over to the newer consoles and to PC? And then the newer stuff that we build for high end, how can we optimize it so it runs on Xbox One? Like there's a lot of cool technical stuff with that.
Yeah. I mean, like it's even the technical stuff, even stuff is that you maybe don't notice it, but it's like just 10% extras where it's like like 4K, 60 FPS, HDR, stuff like that. It just like it's some people think it's like just like flicking a switch sometimes, but it's never that easy. But yeah, like it's also like repurposing the whole world and reading all those textures so they look good in 4K, and building stuff a high enough poly standard, but also using the low poly bake system where losing too much detail and trim sheets, and there's a whole science that obviously goes into like making these things look as good as they do. And I think even looking on your ArtStation, you can see like the stuff you were posting, obviously just the level of detail you guys went into and just some of the structures. I mean, it's definitely one of the most beautiful Halo games I think I've ever played.
I
Even
appreciate
though,
that, man. Yeah.
yeah, man. Even though, I mean, a lot of people would say, it's the same color palette, it's the blues and purples, but I think it's just the art direction has a different vibe where like you're using maybe those limited color palettes, but in a way that makes the structures interesting. Stuff like your Spire control room and other things you've done. Like, there's enough breakup in those shapes that it looks interesting and not just like a kind of shape or a color.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Like, 'cause For Honor's so monolithic. Like, it's just big, broad silhouettes. That's what made For Honor so epic and like memorable. Was like you remember the big structures and the big rooms. It's cool, man. It makes it memorable. It makes you like remember, like, oh, I remember I had this fight here, and there was like these big, giant pillars, and we had creatures coming from the side, and it was like, yeah, man.
Yeah,
I remember
man.
that.
There's definitely there's hints of different color palettes, but there's some things that are just stand out. I mean, like there was one you done, I think it was the Silent Auditorium, which was like kind of like a mix of gold and blue and brown,
Yeah.
and that was also a great structure as well. And I mean, even at looking at the auditorium, how involved are you with those pieces? Are you from start to finish building all of that out, in structured programs, and then modeling UV texture? And are you doing the whole kind of process? Or are you focused on maybe like one particular area and making that really just like crisp?
So it kind of depends. Like early on, what ended up happening is, so the way our structure works is, so we have this blockout set. Like every palette has a blockout set. So it's like that way we can keep with certain standards and specs. So like For Honor, we have our own sets, and like with For Honor, like as you notice, like everything's very angular. So we have very specific angles. Like they're all divisible by 15. And except for ramps, they go from 15 degrees, 22 and a half degrees, and 30 degrees.
Okay, wow.
So
Yeah.
So we have all those, so that we can make sure we build on the grid. And then like we have, like, depending on the player's height and how much they can jump, like those degrees like help us build to, if I use this ramp, it can go up exactly one floor or one or two floors, and then but depending on the angle, I might need to have an adapter that if I use this angle, it's going to perfectly fit. If I use this one, like I might have to make a little wedge piece so that way it'll fit and go back on the grid.
Right.
We have a lot of that stuff. And then every room we try and keep all the angles consistent, because if you have a bunch of angles all over the place, it ends up, it's very psychologically exhausting, and you're not sure why, but it's because there's so many things hitting your mind that it becomes very confusing.
So many tangents in one place starts to develop your brain in a weird way. But that's interesting, because I think Halo's one of the few FPSs, maybe one of the few games, especially even in first person, where you don't have to build just the horizontal plane. It's also vertical, so you're thinking about the up and down space as well, which is really difficult. So,
but to go back to your thing, so originally, like we have the designer blockout, and then our actual designers start blocking out with those pieces. And what's really good about that set is we know it works. So this way, it's a lot easier for us to go in there and then start replacing the pieces with actual geo. So usually, like, what would happen would be like myself and like my team, like we would go in there, we take the designer block out, and then we'd start building on top of it, because everything's so rudimentary. It's like, okay, let's give it some more definition, let's give it some more shape and style here, and then we take it to like what we would call like a proxy stage, which would be like a medium poly like standard. So there's enough detail there so you know what's going on. And then we actually have a environment content team where they specifically focus on just finishing up the assets. So they'll take either a blockout or a mid poly, and that's where they start building the high poly. They'll start baking it down, or they'll make custom trim sheets. And then we both work together, to make sure like it fits the need for the level. And then it just goes back in like nothing. In some cases, though, like just depending on like how much work was involved or how much stuff we needed to finish, then my team would also jump in with our environment content team, and we take it from start to finish. So
right, yeah. I mean, everybody's got their own area. Everybody gets an assigned task, and that's why producers are there. You're getting kind of handed like just schedules and sheets and stuff like that, and you're doing it in sprints. But I mean, are you, especially with the new technology we're talking about, right? Especially Eric, you were talking about pushing to the edge of Xbox One's capabilities, maybe even a little on the Series X. Are
Mhm.
you you were talking about the mid poly flow? Are you still baking down to low poly? Are you
In
still
some, in,
right? Yeah.
like, yeah, in some cases we do. Like a lot of the time, like we got away with trim sheets. Especially to like for UNSC or Banished, like
Mm-hmm.
they're a lot more detailed than Forerunner is. Like if you were to just ignore all the textures, if you were to just look at it in a like just a gray lighting form where everything was just stripped and it was just the silhouettes, Forerunner is very simple. Like in a lot of cases, like there's definitely layering to it, but it's
Enough
usually the
detail
hero
that
props.
it's busy enough, basically.
Yeah, yeah. It's like and that was like one of the things we decided at the beginning was like we wanted to make Foreigner more material based, more texture based, so we could go a little bit easier on
Mhm.
Geo, but
Mhm.
then we really make up for it by having like really crazy like textures and materials. So yeah, that's why you can see a lot of really cool glass parallaxing. You can see all these different layers. Like when you get up close, like you can just see like, oh, if I zoom in on it, I see all these little micro details and all these macro details all over it. And then when you zoom out, it's like, man, that's crispy. So it's
Yeah, I
super
mean, it's
crispy.
one. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things you learn within game design, where like people will maybe even look at things like substance now, which is Painter's incredible so designer, but even within Painter, people get so focused, I think, on just one individual hero prop. Like it's a whole thing now, right, where you build your prop, you build the high low poly, and then you focus so much on individualistic detail on just one prop. But building for scale is like a whole other science of like you say, trim
Oh,
sheets.
oh yeah, absolutely. Like, and especially too, like when people think trim sheets, like it's not just like a singular trim. Like we tend to have like a 2K or a 4K, sheet, and then we have multiple trims on it just for color, for performance. So like even going back to Halo 4, the very first level, the opening level on that ship, I think it was Forward Unto Dawn, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a
Yeah,
long
yeah.
time. Like most of that level was built off of 4 trim sheets. That's all we used. So, and they were all like, there's like two 2048 sheets and like two 1024 sheets, just of pipes and panels and
Yeah, yeah,
buttons.
yeah.
That's all we used, and we did a lot with that. And a lot of people didn't realize like it's the same pipe texture all over the place, but
You can get a lot of mileage out of them if you're
yeah,
clever. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like for people who don't know who are listening, trim sheets are sheets that you'll build that are 3D kind of sections that you'll build into cubes, and then when you texture something, you'll use height maps to basically add detail to wall panels and blocks that isn't modeled, but is just it gives the illusion that it's modeled. So you can get away with using those things on multiple areas and big, spans of rooms that only use one sheet or one UV tile. So yeah, they're very efficient, and I think that's also why people have used them because, like, it just memory-wise, it just makes sense when you're building such vast worlds as you are in Halo, right?
well, absolutely. Especially like in the 360 area, 360 area, you only had so much memory to work with, so
I
it's
got
like,
360. I remember watching the Halo 3 doc, like just the limitation. You're like, oh my god, everything's in HD now. Holy shit!
oh yeah, like I remember like the first couple of games I was working on, like because my first dev console was a 360, so um granted that's not super old. Like I'm working with people like my first like one of the guys I work with, his first game was Double Dragon on the NES, and then
I'll do
had
you one better. I've just interviewed a dude who worked on Ratchet and Clank and basically invented Spyro the Dragon, but like his first game was Sonic the Hedgehog 2 with Sega.
oh man, God, I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, that's coming out soon. Craig's that you'll hear him soon. He's going to be in the
Oh
podcast.
dude, that's exciting. Yeah, dude, I want to hear about that, especially
Yeah,
just
yeah,
with how
yeah. Yeah,
set with.
Alex Kidd, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, then Spyro the Dragon, which he basically concept and built, and then 4 games of Ratchet and Clank with Insomniac before he left. So
Mhm.
like, yeah, there's some people who are like, oh, I worked on like Halo 3 or Halo 2. You're like, whoa, and people are like, no, I worked on Sonic. You're like, jeez, like, it's like,
I know, dude. That especially too. Like, I love Sonic 2, man. Like, I mean, Sonic 3 was my favorite, but dude, Sonic 2, like, I could play that today and
oh
still
yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
and still have fun with it and still beat it and then get angry at the very end because I only
Yeah.
get one ring. So
I didn't play much of the 3D adventure stuff because I mean, I think Mario done that better than Sonic ever could. But like when they released Sonic, I think it was Sonic Mania, which is
mhm.
basically a recap of like basically a lot of the old levels, and it was like a fan game. It was a fan game built for fans, built by fans for fans, where like people would go in and play those games again, and all the levels were very similar to 2
Sure,
and 3, where they had that mix. So did you enjoy the films as well? Like Sonic, have you seen Sonic 2?
I have not. Like a lot of like
Amazing.
my yeah, they look cool. It's just now that I'm a family man. It's a lot. It's a lot harder to watch anything.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no,
It,
you've got to give time for the kids and the family. It's yeah, but I mean, I would advise that if you've seen the first one, right? The first movie.
mm-mm.
Oh wow, okay, right. Both of them are excellent movies. They're really, really,
So,
as I say, faithful to the game. They're really, really good.
yeah.
So
Now, if you've seen the latest Blue's Clues or Daniel
okay,
Tiger,
yeah.
we could talk, man. So
Yeah, it's funny how that's coming back around, and that's the whole thing. It's like relaunching again, and there's a whole renaissance of like. Even I was talking to my friend about the Ninja Turtles cartoon that just came out on Netflix. The whole rise of TMNT, but like
yeah.
all these shows are just coming back and they're finding new life, and they're incredible to watch. They're really incredible.
Yeah, it was
yeah,
interesting. Like I tried to get my son into Ninja Turtles for a little bit. He didn't seem very interested, but I'll try again in a few more months. So, but
yeah, just try and make
it's
them read the comics from like the 80s, man. They're dark. Like if you've ever read The Last Ronin, oh my god, like tears at the end of that. But like it's funny how the comics are so much darker than the actual.
oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I got my wife like a big volume of like the first few comics from the original Ninja Turtle series, and man, that's
hardcore.
deep stuff, man. That's
Hardcore, man, really are hardcore. Yeah, but I mean, like even the fact that like you're talking about working on 360 and NHD, and then now you see stuff like, I mean, AI is what it is. I'm not really want to dive into that, but like with Unreal Engine 5, obviously, which people say like, oh, it's the end of low polys, like high polys forever, and voxel stuff, and obviously we both know that'll take a long time to come into commercial use. Like it's
yeah,
still a couple of years out before you're going to be really saying that stuff. I mean, when I talk to somebody about talking about working in next gen, they're always like, the thing you always aim for in those games is you've got to fake it, right? You've got, you're not really utilizing that system. You're really just trying to fake as much stuff as you can. That it looks next gen, it looks like you're utilizing new stuff, but you're really just trying to. It's like smoke and mirrors almost.
yeah. And something a lot of people need to realize too, like whatever like stock engine you get, whether it be Unreal or Unity, Crytek, Godot, like any of those engines, like building something for your portfolio is very different than a shipped product.
Right, of course.
And that's the thing. Like a lot of people don't understand too. Like there's always going to be really cool demos. Like I've been seeing these really cool demos like forever, and I'm actually glad to see people building in like real environments now. Because when I used to see tech demos, it was always like an old man face,
Right.
or it was like a pixie fairy, or something very whimsical.
Compared to an actual environment or something.
Yeah. So now we're actually getting like big like canyons and like once their engine gets further along, then you start seeing tech demos with like water and glass and foliage, like those.
Skyboxes, mountains, yeah.
Because any engine, like if you see a tech demo with glass, foliage, and water all in the same tech demo, that's a solid setup.
And then fire something like Lumia in it, which is their whole new lighting system for Unreal, which basically is like real-time lighting, like kind of ray tracing almost. And
yeah, man, it's cool.
There's so many cool things within Unreal. Like, I mean, but like you said, like it's difficult when people try to build with Unreal. But then if you go to places like 343, because I'm assuming you guys still use your own proprietary engine. So I mean, like if you're building,
we talked about slip space. So
yeah. So I mean, like it's one of these things where like the systems will be similar, but not exactly the same. So if you build stuff in Unreal, you'll get a gist for like buttons and menus and placing stuff within real engines. But it's one of these things you've got to understand that you won't always be using Unreal or Unity or something like. A lot of studios will have their own. I mean, but the funny thing is, it's getting less and less now, right? There is more studios that are just switching to Unreal. Like even Crystal Dynamics recently, who were like, we're going to Unreal 5, and that was a big thing for them as well, as far as I know.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends like what kind of style they want to do, and especially like a lot of studios, like they've just been so deep into their systems, like it may not be cost effective to switch over. I mean, that's like at bare minimum, like you're gonna be down for like a year, even longer, because just getting all your stuff set up, getting file structure. Like it's not just the art; it's like how's the file structure work? How does how the way your AI works? Like every engine does AI differently. So if you have your AI set up in your proprietary engine, like down to the T, and then you're moving it over to something else, it's like, I got to rebuild that whole thing.
In the other place. Yeah. Now people think it's like a drag and drop where they're like, oh, yeah, Unreal 5, everybody's just going to like snap their fingers and we'll all be using it. And it's like, yeah, that's in a perfect world, sure. Like, logistically, like in the real world, no, that's not what happens. So, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think even just a sense in where you talk about Unreal in general, but like, I mean, I think engine is something that people also focus on now, but I don't think it's definitely not as important as core fundamental modeling skills. Like, I think that's always going to be the thing that sells you, because no matter what engine you're using, you're always going to need to implement those skills in a project.
Yeah. I know we've talked about this before, like in our Discord, but I one of the things I always emphasize too is we have all these great tools now, and I am super grateful for a lot of them. Like, I don't want to like name products just because I don't want people to misconstrue that I'm insulting it or like talking down to it, which I'm not. Like,
no.
I use a lot of these tools, like for my personal work, and we have a whole system, for, every studio uses all these tools. Like, everybody uses them. The thing is, though, like, you need to know how to build those things yourself. Like, it's one thing to grab like an asset from a store or from a program and then put it in. But if you're doing a portfolio review and someone says, "Oh, I really like that tree. How'd you build that tree?" Like, you say, "Oh, well, I didn't build it. I got it from here." It's like, see, back in the day, like, it'd be like, "Oh, well," and then that'd be it. That's just the end of the interview right there. But nowadays, it's like, okay, well, so you use that from this program. That's fine. Could you tell me how you would build it?
Yeah.
And then
like, have you learned speed tree? Do you know where that is? Do you know how to work it? Like, it might be handy because you're doing environment stuff.
Yeah. And even then too, like with speed tree, like, that's still a great one, but it's like, let's say like especially like a lot of indie studios, they can't afford a speed tree license. Those things are expensive. Like, just a personal speed tree license is like, I think it's like $2,000-$3,000, something around there. Like, it's expensive. Especially too, like, I mean, there's obviously tiers, but like,
yeah.
But it's still a lot of money. Like, it's nothing it's not chump change. And a lot of indie studios, like, they can't afford that. Like, they can either buy one program or they can hire somebody. So
yeah.
So it's like, could you build a tree from Maya? Like, do you know how to take a block or a cylinder and then extrude it out, extend it? Do you understand like forms? Like, how would you make a branch?
Leaves, bushes. Yeah, like, even getting it in ZBrush and making, adding detail, making a bit more high
that too. Like ZBrush it's when I bought ZBrush, it was $300, and it was ZBrush 3.2 when I bought it. So, and I remember learning ZBrush on ZBrush 2, like, in school.
I remember talking to Maciej Kutiara, and he was talking about using ZBrush when it was still 2D. Like, it wasn't even a 3D program. You know what I mean? Like, way back in the day when it was like 2.5D almost.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, in Dynamesh wasn't even a thing. Like, even to think now about Dynamesh, right? Like, how helpful that is, and remeshing within ZBrush, like, and those tools are relatively new, compared to the life of the program. But yeah, like, I think people they're kind of spoiled for choice. That's also a problem, because it's, people look in the grand scheme of things and think, where the fuck do I start? Because there's so much choice.
Yeah. It'd be cool to actually, like, later on we can talk about like some of that stuff too, like how to build on top of that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember when Dynamesh first came out, and it's like the same thing. Like, everybody in the industry says, it's like, dude, have you seen this? It can't get any better than this. Like, this is this is it, baby. This is it.
Yeah. And then there'll be nothing else beyond this. Yeah.
Yeah. It's. I remember saying that when I played Oblivion, like, on a plasma TV.
Oh my god!
I'm like, dude, look at this grass. It ain't gonna get any better than this, man.
How even,
where are we gonna go from here? And all of a sudden, like, lo and behold, like 6 years later, it's like, man,
Skyrim comes out. Yeah,
you got Skyrim. It's like, dang, man, they did it again. Where's it gonna go from here?
Where's it gonna go from here? Yeah, I mean, it was like that when we were watching E3. It was, they were doing the announcements and whatever, but it was the whole thing of the Starfield demo from Bethesda, and we were just like sitting half the time with like our jaws on the floor, because that stuff is crazy good.
Yeah, like Bethesda, they, like, every game, man, like, and that's what you want. Like, you want to make a better game than your last one, and that's
you've got to, or people won't buy it.
Well, even then, like, something that a lot of people get hung up on is like, man, like, why doesn't this game look like this? Right. And, like, one of my biggest pet peeves is so a lot of people will compare, like, here's this game, like, it's a shooter, and then they compare it to a platformer, and it's like, these are two very different games. And it's like, why doesn't it look like this? It's like, well, I mean, it's never going to, because that's not the kind of
That's what the game is.
And like the way you build a third person game versus a first person game is so different. Now it's like if you compare like this platformer to this platformer, it's like, oh man, okay, that now I'm seeing what you're talking about, or like this shooter, this RPG to this RPG. Like that makes now if we're just talking tech wise though, it's like I wonder what tech they're using. Do you think like they have an opportunity to bring that kind of tech into this game? Like,
of course.
Like, and that's the thing too. Like with
It's like comparing. I was gonna say it's like comparing Halo to Call of Duty. There's maybe a comparison there because they're both first-person shooters, but they live in different worlds. But then like compare maybe like Halo to like Zelda, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's, they're just chalk and cheese basically. So
yeah, like that's what I mean. It's like, man, that's a heck of a jump. Like I mean, if we're just talking like tech wise, sure. I mean, we can always talk tech. I mean, you can implement tech anywhere. Like
yeah.
It's just how you're going to do it, and then what's the overall like goal going to be. But
does it fit? Yeah.
But yeah, it's really hard to compare game A, which is an FPS, to game B, which is like this super cartoony platform. Yeah. It's like I mean I don't know how to compare it. Like they're two very different things.
I mean, I think Halo was getting that in a sense in the media when it was a whole thing of like, I think because people had seen how far stuff like Call of Duty had come and other first-person shooters. But then it's funny though when you think about it in the world where there's not a ton of AAA first-person shooters, right? It's a very rare category, that is done well. I mean, even looking at the guys at id Software who relaunched Doom and Doom Eternal in the last 5 years, and what an amazing job they've done with that, and how they totally reinvented it again and brought it back from the dead, and put it on the forefront of FPS. But first-person shooters they're very rare games to see done well, but also just very rare games, because I think the bulk of like the industry is mostly third-person action adventure, platforming, and or puzzle games and or mobile games, and even looking over the last year, but it's like stuff that's been released, and even like Horizon, like third-person action games are very common now as well, like Tomb Raider and Horizon Zero Dawn and GTA games like that. But like FPSs are very rare to and the field that they're in. I mean, I could only name so many. I mean, one of them I was thinking about was BioShock, which is something you worked on at one point as well. So like it is a very rare genre that is done well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably coming from a background also, because we talked about learning ZBrush in school. Was it something that you were aiming for early on? Like, were you always going to focus on like the hard surface sci-fi stuff you're kind of doing now, or was it?
So going back to actually like how I got to where I was. So when I went to art school, so I went to the Art Institute of Los Angeles, which doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But I purposely picked that school because right next door was Activision headquarters. Oh. So we were literally the distance between like you and your neighbor, which I'll assume is like fairly close. Like
yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm talking like less than like 20 steps was between the school and Activision headquarters, and then across the street was Treyarch and Luxoflex, and then further down the street there's Sony Santa Monica, there's DreamWorks, there's ImageWorks, there's all these different.
You're in LA, right? You're in the heart of it. You're like right in the center of the industry.
And like, and all the teachers, like for the most part, were still working. So a lot of them were just doing that as because they wanted to teach. So
right.
all the stuff I was learning was current.
Right.
But I originally came in like I wanted to be a character artist because like to this day I still feel character artists.
It's like the most popular things to do.
They're the rock stars, man. Like
yeah.
Everybody wants to be a character, and the competition for character art is insane. Like it's really tough, and it's one of the hardest ones to get a job in because studios only have so many positions for that. Like,
your character team would be like what, 10 people or something, if that.
Like it's like in general, like an average is like less. It's definitely less than 20, like a lot of the time. But like bigger studios tend to have more. But it's definitely like pretty low in general, like how many positions there are. And same thing with concept artists too. Like a lot of people, like there's a lot of really good concept artists.
Everybody wants to do concept. Yeah, everybody.
And like I originally wanted to be a character artist, and then there's this, and I hope when people are trying to figure out what they want to do, if they want to be in entertainment in general, like whether it be games, movies, TV. It doesn't matter. Just entertainment as a whole. Like, it's okay if you can't build a character, but you can build an environment. Like, I know plenty of character artists. They can build this photoreal like portrait of an actor or an actress. You tell them to build a chair, though.
Yeah.
It's just something just doesn't click, and it's like, dude, it's just a chair, but it's like there's just something about it, and that's the same thing with me. Like, could I build a character? Sure, but it's going to take me twice as long. And especially building humans or humanoids, like, because just you and me talking right now, like, I can clearly tell you're a human. There's obvious characteristics. There's eyes, nose, ears, like a more or less common facial structure that we've gone through like thousands of years of human evolution compared to the millions of the world. We know what a human looks like. And then when you try and build that in 3D, and it's like, even someone who's not art centric, they know when that's off. Like,
the uncanny valley.
Yeah, even then it's just like, dude, something's off. So I can't pinpoint if something's off with your character. It's like all of a sudden, like
one eye. Like, what's going on?
It's like why is the arm here? Like, shouldn't it be around here? Like, what's up with what's up with those muscles, man? Like, there's something going on. Like, you just know something's off. But yeah, and then I ended up just focusing on level design and environment art because one of my teachers, he gave this really good advice that I still tell people to this day. Like, whether I'm helping someone like mentoring like an up and comer or someone who just asked for critique, like there's two pieces of advice I always give them, and I swear by them to this day. So one is, be a jack of all trades, but master of one.
Right.
Like, usually the theme is jack of all trades, master of none. But what my teacher said, be a master of one. So pick your foundation. So in my case, it's environment art. But if someone were to ask me, like, can you animate this? Yes. Can you program this? I can do it enough to make it work. I like, more or less, like, you're a generalist, but you specialize in one thing. So that's your fallback. That's your go-to. That's the one that you shove that out first, and that's what gets you in the door. And then when you're talking to people, you have the interview. It's like, man, you can like, this is really cool, but like, I'm also looking for someone who can do this. It's like, well, let me show you this stuff that I can do. So I know how to do this and that and that. So the other piece of advice that he gave was, and this was back in 2006, 2007, if I'm remembering correctly. So at that point, like between 2005 and 2008, like, a lot of people were getting hired if they knew how to bake a normal map. Because like, normal maps were really coming up. Like, Doom 3 just dropped, started dropping them, and then like Gears of War just came out. Like, a lot of like people like, dang, normal maps. Then I remember the big thing was, you don't need to worry about poly count anymore. Just bake it, baby. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
So if you knew how to bake a really good normal map, like, people were getting hired. Like, I remember like everyone's portfolio had a wooden crate in it. Or like some kind of like a sniper rifle. If it was baked really well, you could do that. But the thing he told me too is, because a lot of those positions were getting eaten up, because a lot of people were learning how to do baking, and a lot of people, they either figured it out from like poly count or CG Society, because that's all we had. Like, YouTube was still very young, and it was mostly just people jumping off their roof or like doing dumb stuff in their backyard at the time.
Even ArtStation, I mean, it's funny to think even ArtStation was 2014 when it launched.
That's right. And I remember it really came to fruition after CG Hub it just died one day. It just disappeared, and people's literal livelihood, like all their portfolio, just gone in an instant.
No more shiny bib armor.
But yeah, so he was saying, like, you're probably not going to get a job in games, and you need to accept that. But that doesn't mean you can't get a job in 3D. So I took that to heart. So literally, once I learned 3D Max enough to be competent in it, like, I could model, I could texture, and I could light, and I could render in it, which is bare minimum of what you need to know to do your job.
The 4 pillars, basically, of 3D environment art.
So I just started applying everywhere that could use a 3D Max artist, excluding some industries which
Mhm.
you can use your
Like
imagination of what
architecture stuff.
no, even architecture stuff. Like I've done some of that work too. Like um I'm talking, there's certain industries that may be more oriented to certain demographics.
Oh, okay.
I will say that they pay a lot of money,
Mhm.
but and if you need to pay your bills,
Mhm.
you do what you got to do. But
Yeah.
but I would not take those jobs. Um, but anything else though, like if someone just needed to build like a refrigerator in 3D Max, I was there. You need me to animate this weird looking dog across your screen? I'll do it. It's 3D Max. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And so like a good chunk of my beginning career was not games. Like a lot of it was just doing freelance stuff for just random companies that were just doing 3D for other businesses. And like for instance too, like one of the stuff I did was accident recreation and forensics. Just recreating that kind of stuff in 3D. Like we'd send out a team they'd go scan the area, and then we rebuild it in 3D Max, render it out in V-Ray or Mental Ray. Then that stuff would be used in actual court cases, for
Wow. Interesting.
So, and that was a really cool job. It's also very depressing because you have to see a lot of gruesome stuff, man.
Horrible stuff. I was going to say, yeah, kind of scarred your mental image.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You either get really like depressed over it, or you end up looking at it as like, this really sucks for these people, but we can help them. Like we can find a way to get them the justice they want.
Look at it. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like you're using art as therapy because you're using it to heal people or help them. So that's positive.
Yeah, and then like just working at like other studios where they didn't do games at all. Like they would just do R&D for other companies. Like I remember building stuff for like interfaces for like weapon systems for military, like doing stuff for like certain companies that deal with like space travel and stuff like that. Like what could their like future endeavors be? Like what could it look like? How can we prototype like something that that we could possibly build in the future?
Yeah.
Like
we interviewed Lorne Lanning back a couple of episodes, and he's the founder of Oddworld and Habits. So he made Abe's Odyssey. But one of his first industry jobs was doing 3D for like it was like military, like United States government, like weapons visualization, like for programs for weapons that were like weird and out there and stuff like that. He would do the 3D for them, and then they would take that to the Pentagon and they would get other funding or whatever. But that was like his first proper job in 3D, outside of games, and that was what he was doing for way back when it was like I think like light wave and stuff, or like light form, whatever you call it. But like it wasn't even like Max or Maya or anything like that. It was like way back. But yeah, like it's weird how the things you take on just to pay the bills. But like, yeah, it sounds like you've had a really interesting and broad career before you go anywhere near games.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like I learned so much from just doing those kinds of jobs. And the fact is, like a lot of those people you meet there probably know somebody at a movie studio or a game studio. Like
right,
like the 3D world is very small. Like
yeah.
And,
I mean, the entertainment arts in general is just very small.
It's super small, like, and just getting all the stuff, like getting all that experience, like that's where I learned how to rig. That's where I learned how to do effects. That's where I learned how to do a bunch of that kind of like more technical stuff, and even like Max scripting. Like I learned it from doing jobs, not games, because they would teach you that. Where like a lot of studios now, like the days of like letting you just come in with a good attitude and like they teach you as they go. Like,
oh fuck yeah!
I'm not saying they don't exist. Like there's still a small handful.
I mean, I don't think they do exist at this point. They're super fucking rare if they do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really hard to find those kind of studios anymore. Like that kind of mindset is gone. Like in a lot of places. Like I said, I'm sure there's probably a good handful that still do it, but like I've never seen that.
It's rare. I've rarely heard of people, even the last 5-6 years in the industry. I've most studios I know you kind of have to hit the ground running at the same speed as everybody else.
Yeah, especially too with a lot of the newer engines, like especially a lot of them, like they have such good pricing models, like Unreal, Unity, Crytek. Especially if you're indie, like they don't charge too much for professional indie, and then you can get like a real small studio, and like there's so many good tutorials out there. Just how to get yourself up and running, and then the communities are really fantastic too. Like Like there's a lot of people that want to help you, which is good. Like,
I mean, there's so many, even like you said, we were talking about even just like students, like there's so many people, even in the 3D space, who I see posting stuff in ArtStation, full environments, that are fully, UV textured lit, in Unreal, run in real time, have effects in them, like the whole 9 yards, right?
mm-hmm.
From one person, not a team, a person.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's your bar already. Is just hitting that before you even get a foot in the door for an interview,
Yeah, I mean, that's a way to look at it too. Like, I mean, this person did all this, but that's also it also you need to think about, like, do they even want to work on a team? Like, because that's the thing too. Like, there's a lot of people that are just like doing it just for themselves, and they don't want to work on a team because they don't want to work for someone. They want to work for themselves. So, but then again, too, there's a lot of people that just love doing it. It's like, man, I figured all this stuff out. I want to be able to do all of it or some of it on an actual, legitimate team. I want to actually make a shipping product. I can have people, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people can see my work. Like, there's plenty of that stuff too.
So how did you land from school and doing the freelance stuff you've done to working on your first video game? How did that come about?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, like, since we were right next door to Activision and a lot of the teachers were still in the industry, like, our school had this mod team called Game Wizards. And what we would do is we would use Unreal 2000, the Unreal 2004 editor that you can get with Unreal Tournament. And then we would just start modding it. Yeah. And so what we would do is we'd build these mods, mm-hmm. and then every quarter we would have a presentation, and we'd invite tons of like art directors or artists or level designers from all these different studios to come take a look at our work. And a lot of us actually got jobs that way.
Oh, wow.
Because we'd have full playable demos. And
right.
So then, like, we would just, we do a presentation, we do a story breakdown, like, here's the lore for our game. And then, we just play it through. We'd have them play it. And then a lot of people, got hired that way because we broke it down like how a studio would work. Granted, like, that mod team was way harder than an actual studio gig because the thing with a lot of schools is, like, they put so much pressure on you. But then what makes it worse is the student themselves, they have no knowledge of what the industry is like. So they just put extra pressure on themselves. So just to try and get it done. But yeah, so a lot of that happened that way.
Was that how you kind of moved into the Transformers game? Like the first one you've got in your portfolio, but I don't know if that was your actual first game you worked on.
No, so my first game I actually worked on. So one of the teachers had his own studio. He was a co-founder. It was called Isopod Labs.
Oh, okay.
And what he would do is, like, a lot of us, like, he would give us internships. So, and then we would work on the games they were working on so that we could get, an actual, in-game credit and then build from there. Like, the first game I worked on was Vigilante 8 Arcade for 360 as a tester. So,
nice.
And then they hired some of us on to work on another game they were making, which never came out. Mm-hmm. But it was in a sense sort of like Vigilante 8 or Twisted Metal. Like, it was sort of like that, but a little bit more like it was going a different way. Like, but it just never came out.
Yeah.
But like a lot of us that started there, Luxoflux, which was the Activision studio at the time. They no longer exist anymore. But a lot of us that started at Isopod went to Luxoflux. And then because we all knew each other, like, because we all just started at the same time, we were all helping each other in school. Like, it's like, hey, man, we got some openings coming up. Do you want to put your name in? And then we'd all go in for an interview. And it's like, they liked all of our attitudes. And because we all knew each other, it's like, well, we can all vouch for each other. That's how I got on Transformers too. And then just working on that, contracts end. Like, a lot of the beginning work was contract work or freelance work.
Yeah, right.
And I will say this. So I know a lot of people, with good reason, they want to land a full-time on-staff salaried job.
Of course.
Like, that's your goal, right? You want to be able to get a job, that's consistent, you know, has good pay and benefits. And, you know, it's a way that you can take care of yourself and possibly your family or loved ones, you know, whatever your situation is.
Yeah. Plus in America, like, you know, like medical insurance, cover, all that kind of stuff. Like it comes with a perk as full-time employee. So
Yeah, like that's a big thing in the US too. Like, and you know, when you're a contractor, you know, a lot of agencies, they may not give you benefits. So you have to, you know, pay your own way.
Yeah. Which ain't cheap.
Yeah, it's definitely not cheap. But yeah, so, you know, contracts end, and I will say this. So I get it. There's a lot of stigma, and there's been a lot of reports, especially in the last 5 years, you know, a lot of contractors sadly have been taken advantage of, and a lot of people had bad times. Like, I'm not taken away from that. Yes. I completely understand their pain. Like, I mean, I've definitely worked a few jobs that were pretty terrible.
Yeah.
But I've always had the mindset of, if I'm in that situation, there's two things I can do. I can quit and just get a new job, or I can just finish this contract up, get my money, and then just leave.
Do something else. Yeah.
And that's okay. If the situation is bad, you shouldn't feel bad about quitting. I just want to emphasize that if you're not happy and if they're not treating you right, you should quit.
Like, but always have an exit strategy, so you have some correlation into where you're going. Like you have kind of like a plan, because quitting cold turkey is very common for people who are frustrated. Like, fuck it, like, and they just quit up and quit. But you don't have like a plan. You're going to wander into the wind, and you'll be like, oh fuck.
Absolutely, like you should have a backup plan. But I mean, there's situations where you're not going to have one, and you need to make that call. Like, is this important enough for me to keep long term, or longer than it needs to be? And if it's not, you need to do what's best for you. Like, if you need to quit cold turkey, you should hopefully be responsible and mature enough to figure out what to do next, which the obvious thing is you get another job. But I'm also saying that too, as at the time when I was doing that a lot, I wasn't quitting jobs, but it's just, I had contracts that ended. And it's like, some people, like, when their contract ended, like, they would feel like they were a failure. It's like, oh, well, that team didn't hire me on full time, or that team, you know, maybe they don't like me. That's why they didn't extend my contract. It's
right.
A lot of times, like, businesses just don't have the money. Like, it doesn't matter, like, how big or small the business is. Like, you know, they have a budget, and if there's just not enough budget to hire, you know, they hired on 5 contractors, but they could only afford to keep one. I mean, that it's usually, like, a good chunk of the time, it's usually not your fault. It's usually, that's just all the money they have. Like, there's just not much you can do.
At the end of the day, you just have to realize that, you know, money will always come first, and they'll look after probably their in-house staff first, versus, you know, because if their in-house staff are struggling and they've also got 13 contractors, they'll be like, well, we need to basically lose all the contractors and keep the full-time staff. So yeah,
right. It's the harsh reality of business. Like, and like, I've definitely been I've been in rooms where it's like, you know, they called us all in. It's like, hey, we really like all your work. You've been great. We couldn't have done this without you, but we have to cut your contracts today because we just, you know, we lost funding and we just can't afford to pay you anymore. And it's like,
same.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, I've been in those meetings. They're no great. Yeah, your heart sinks. You're like, fuck, what am I going to do?
Yeah, it's like, it is what it is. And, you know, I'm saying this as someone, like, when I was single, I just took, like I said, I just took a job that was 3D.
Right,
like,
yeah.
And that was the mindset I had. Look, I have bills I need to pay. I have my own responsibilities. I need to get paid so I can pay my bills. Yeah. And I want to do 3D. So I'm going to pick any 3D job within reason. That they're, like, as I mentioned, there's some stuff it's just not going to touch them. But you know, and I just get another job. You know, and granted, like, there's a lot, like, the older I get and the more, like, since I have to take a broader view, because I've also been part of many conversations, like, over the years of, like, should we hire this person or not? You know, should we let this person go or not? There's a lot of times too where it's like, you know, I can easily say, oh, well, if I lose my job, I'll just go get another job. You know, that's just my mindset. And if it's not in 3D, I'll try and get a 3D job later. But you know what? I got to pay my bills. So if I need to go work retail again or go work somewhere else, I'll do it. You do what you got to do to support yourself and your family. But, you know, some people, you know, they just don't have that luxury. It's like, I can't move. Like, I can't do this. Like, I can't just go up and root myself or root my family out of our comfort zone to somewhere else. You know, a blessing of this pandemic was a lot of places now you can stay wherever you are, and you know, you don't have to uproot your whole family anymore. You could work remotely. A lot of studios are doing that, but you know, the sad side is like a lot of studios aren't doing that because they either don't have the structure for it, or it's just like they're used to having people work in house. And I definitely see the benefit of having everybody in house. Like it's a lot easier
for
to
games,
meet,
especially. I think
like,
games is very unique in that sense that you thrive when people are, you know, you can go to meetings and the whole team's in one place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like it's very easy to get a feel for people. Like you can work off of each other. You know, there's a certain kind of kismet or chemistry, whatever fancy business term you want to use.
Synergy. Yeah.
Synergy. There you go. That's a good one. Yeah, it's like there's definitely merit to that. Like I definitely don't disagree with that. But there's also too, like, you know, being able to work within your zone to be comfy where you can do your best work because you don't have to worry about people walking behind you. You don't have to worry about distractions other than what's happening, you know, outside. You know, granted,
Even the fact that you can just like get up and like walk to another department or like another person and just like get feedback almost instantly, then rather than waiting on an email.
Yeah, and even then too, like I mean, we hit like whatever messenger your company's using, whether it be Skype or Teams
Slack
or Zoom,
or
Slack,
shotgun,
whatever.
Yeah.
Like there is some benefit to that. Like if a lot of your studio is remote, like you can't just, you know, do that. Like you can't just have these like one-on-ones like without the rest of the team. And like there's been a good mindset of like, hey, if we're gonna do this, you know, the Skype meeting, you know, let's call this person up, let's get everybody in a room, and you don't have to go find them anymore because you just go on the messenger and be like, oh, there they are, they're online, and then you just bug them. You don't have to go searching for them or anything like that. Like there's definitely
I was just going to say, there's a funny article where there was a company who were getting bored basically of Zoom because they were just doing Zoom constantly every day.
Yeah.
And they started a private server in Red Dead where they would all, Red Dead 2 Online, where they would get characters in Red Dead 2 Online and they would go around and find each other in the world and then set at campfires and talk around the campfires for meetings.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I was like,
dude,
an original take on like having meetings, especially in video games. Like it's funny how like I think that was also almost how Red versus Blue started with the Halo stuff, where people would you know, like to meet up or talk about like business stuff they were doing, they would go and play Halo, and they would also just sit in the server and talk to each other. And that's where it started, the conversations where they would start to make like funny jokes during the conversations, and then it, you know, built eventually into like the whole skit thing. But yeah, it's like almost like we were talking about Red Dead 2 the other day, that it's almost like the metaverse, because the metaverse is coming, right? And everyone's kind of talking about that, where like people will have like, you know, it feels like you have an in-person conversations or meetings, but they're really just a virtual avatar. But the Red Dead 2 thing was definitely interesting. I thought, yeah, it's a really interesting way, like our Grand Theft Auto or something like that, where it's like a real world setting. You can make your own person and then, you know, walk into situations where you can just openly talk to people.
Yeah, the last time I ever heard of that actually happening a lot was I know recently people were doing that with Animal Crossing, which I thought was adorable. But then before that, last time I heard about something like that was when Second Life was still like a major thing.
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah, when it was still a thing that existed in the world. Yeah.
It was like a quirky thing, like, you know, fancy businesses would do if they had like a decent laptop at the time, which, you know, had like an i3, like 23 something in it. And it's like, oh, I can run Second Life without a graphics card. So
yeah.
And it's like, man.
I mean, the whole Red Dead 2 thing was interesting because the worlds now are, I mean, you've played Red Dead, I'm assuming, but if you haven't, but like the worlds are so real and vivid that like, yeah, you could find it more interesting to walk through that world, and you know, even they've done like walking things where they would go like hunting together or like on a mission and talk as they're hunting, like have a conversation, like almost like an outing, like a company outing thing. But it's hard as well, because even during the pandemic, it's been hard for people to have those kind of interactions as well. And I know people are now making an effort that if you're coming into the office, they're trying to make it more appealing, that they will organize some kind of social event or something going on in the office that would bring people in, that would be more than just like, you know, because people don't just want to come to the office if they're just going to put their head down and their headphones on, like, and do busy work. They want to have something that draws them in to the office.
Something that's interesting is like there's a lot of places that are doing hybrid work schedules now. You know, you have a couple days here, a couple days in house. The only issue that's I've been seeing consistently is trying to get all this, like your team in on the same hybrid days as you. Like you could want to work like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but maybe your team just wants to come in Thursday and Friday, but you can't,
Right.
So then you end up just in the situation that you were already in, where it's like you're still just on a bunch of Zoom meetings or a bunch of Skype calls or
people who aren't there. Yeah,
with people who aren't there, and it's kind of like, did I really even need to come in at this point? Because I'm just spending the entire time just on Zoom, but now I'm just in a different desk.
I mean, it's a double-edged sword as well, because even with the Zoom meetings and the whole fact that you're just having to commute to your bedroom or your spare room or whatever you're using at the time for your office, but you're then, because you're gaining that time back from commuting, you're spending it more in work, and then it's trying to balance not just doing like 12 hours a day, in your computer, because you're so close to your proximity, and then even then, like shutting the door is one thing, but even that, I think even for me, it was painful was knowing that my office is in my house. It's hard to separate your work-life balance.
Oh, absolutely. Especially too, there's a lot of people that just have like a real small studio apartment or a flat where it's just like it's just one room. It's just all one room. So you go to the kitchen and you turn around, like, oh, there's your desk. There's your office right there. Or
the Zoom meeting's still on. Fuck, I better not be making my toast. I'll switch my camera off. Yeah,
it's really difficult. And especially too, like, there's always that time. It's like, well, I've been thinking about this thing. My work computer's right there. Maybe I can just roll. I can just go to the office for a little bit. Let's just finish that up, and then it can definitely be hard. It's one of those things, like, if you feel good about what you did that day, like you personally, I mean, you should just call it.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously everybody's situation is different. A lot of people's, mentality, or whether it be, they feel like they're not good enough, or they feel like they could have done more.
You want to put the extra hours in.
Yeah. Or it's like, I want to prove that I'm this person, people are really screwing up. I need to go in here and, fix it up, that way, we can keep on track. Like, I've heard a lot of those stories from so many people, like during these last few years. And I get it. Like,
everybody wants to be a rock star. Everybody wants to be the guys who are doing interviews and on the cover of magazines and all that stuff. Like, it's almost toxic, because you got people working at your studio who are like, well, I mean, Sparth left now, obviously, but like, when Sparth was there, or you've got Ben Morrow and stuff like that, like, everybody in the studio must look up to those guys and think, oh God, I want to be like them. But then those guys are the unicorns in the industry, right? They're the rare breed of people who, go above and beyond and have these crazy, personal projects and everything like that, like Huxley and stuff, Ben's doing. But, you don't have to aspire to that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, like, especially with Sparth and Ben, like, I love those guys, and they're pretty normal, down to earth guys. So they're just, when they have free time, they do their thing, and if they don't, they don't. You tend to see more, like, with people just, a lot of up and coming artists, a lot of people just getting in, they want, I for sure see that constantly. And it kind of, like, what kind of sucks is you kind of have to go through so many cycles of just going through the motions of, like, you're going to have bad days, you're going to have good days. And a concept artist I worked with, like, a long time ago, one of the quotes he told me was, "You're only as good as your worst day." And it's like, man, that hit me like a train, like
a ton of bricks. Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, or you're only as good as your last project, whatever you worked on last. I mean, if your games are continually cancelled, or you're kind of jumping between studios, then that might be nothing. So it's difficult.
And it's one of those things, like, as I've gotten older, and just trying to keep myself healthy, and then recently having a family, and it's even just getting older. It's just, I don't really need
that as much.
Yeah, I don't really need to have all the likes and the follows and the comment. Like, I appreciate everyone I get, and I'm still happy that people like you actually want to talk to someone like me, or I get students or people that hey, I've looked at your work for years, and I'd love your feedback on this. And which is super inspiring, because like I get pretty emotional over it, because I was in that same boat. Like, I was emailing like tons of people at the time, like one of my favorite artists, Kevin Johnstone. Like, I love his work, like all his work he did for Unreal and Gears.
Really, really talented.
Like I remember emailing him like for feedback on my portfolio, and like he ripped it apart, but it was good. Like
Yay!
And that was one of the things too about art school, because all the teachers were still working. They were brutally honest, and because they don't deal with like school, they deal with real businesses with real investor money and like shareholder money. Like they have to deliver top quality products. Like, so the mentality is very different. Like it's not like it's nothing against mod teams or your personal work. It's just like you're dealing with somebody else's money, and it's a lot. Like my first week in art school, I had a traditional drawing class, and basically to get a gist of where everyone was at, we do a still life. And I remember I did mine, and the teacher, he looked at my work, he picked it up, he did this kind of thing, like turning it around, and then he ripped my paper up, and then he crumbled it, and he threw it in my face, and then he said, "This work is shit.
Oh my God.
But I'm going to help you fix it.
Okay.
But we have to start over." And
I mean, I don't know. That's I'm a bit conflicted with that.
So,
feedback
so at the time, obviously a lot of people aren't going to be doing that now.
Right.
But at the time, like that was a very typical thing in like the 90s and early 2000s.
Right.
Like people were brutal. Like I also remember too working at a studio a long time ago. If you broke the build and people came in the next day and they couldn't work, they'd find out what check-in broke the build, and they'd bring that person up in front of everyone, and it's like, "This dude broke the build. Laugh at him." Okay. Oh my God. Go fix the problem.
Jesus Christ.
So I mean that's not it's not good. It's not a good thing.
No.
But I mean that's the kind of mentality like things were at the time.
Yeah.
And as bad as it was, my screen flickered. Never mind. As bad as that was, like they would always sit down and give you the advice you needed to fix it.
Yeah.
It was one of those cruel to be kind mentalities, which is not a thing much anymore, which is good.
Yeah. I think something that's not even cruel now, it's like there's a whole mixed bag where people try to mix encouraging people, but also being realistic in where you should aim your talents or what you should really focus on or how good you really are. Because you don't want to be delusional to people. You don't want to sugarcoat, things.
Yeah. That's the line I try and cross a lot, or I try and walk a lot, especially to like, because I know what it feels like to be embarrassed and ridiculed in front of an entire studio. And I don't want to give that to people. Like, I don't want to do that to people. And I believe I don't.
Oh, it's cool. I've told you to fuck off plenty of times, Tim. You know this.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
But yeah, anytime I've had conversations, I've told him to go fuck himself. So it's all good.
I mean, it is what it is, man. It is what it is. It's but like when people give me like when they ask for my feedback, and I give it to them, and I tend to get the most emails in the winter and the summer, because that's where a lot of colleges, like a lot of the students are graduating, like their terms are ending, and I take no pleasure at all in telling these people about to graduate, they've spent a lot of money and a lot of time, and just telling them like, dude, your portfolio isn't good. Like this isn't even like hitting the bar for what a mobile game would be like.
Right. Yeah.
And let me phrase here. I like mobile games. They're very fun. I'm not criticizing anyone who works on mobile games, but
if they're aiming for like working in 343, then you've got to be like, well,
yeah, it's like but even like every game studio that's worth their salt has this bar they need to hit, like a bare minimum bar.
It's a consumer market. If things don't look good enough, people aren't going to buy them. It's simple as that.
And then just like seeing them go like, dude, I've spent so much time and my teachers were telling me this was great. And I'm like, well, like I said, I'm just one guy. You can email your stuff to anyone and whoever you want, how many people you want.
Right. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you're going to get the same answer. But if you don't, great. But this is my personal feeling. Like, I don't think this is good enough. And a lot of the times they'll say what studio they're trying to work there, they want to hit. Yeah. And I'll tell them like, look, I don't think this is up to snuff because of these reasons. If you want, I know a guy here. Let me send you their information, and
see what you think.
And you can either email them or look at their work. And the other thing too is like, I want to work at, Treyarch. It's like, okay, well, I know a bunch of people at Treyarch, so here's their ArtStation portfolios, and here's yours. So I want you to look at theirs. Yep. Yeah. Put yours work next to their work. Mm. If your work, and you need to be realistic, if your work doesn't at least look like it or exceed it, you're probably not going to get it. Not saying that you won't, but it's very unlikely you'll get a position that you want. Now, granted, there's a lot of great positions, like great starter positions. So, like I myself, early in my career, like when I worked on God of War 3, but I came in as a collision artist. So I came in doing tech art and fixing all the collision for the entire game. Yeah. And a lot of people will say like, well, that's, collision's not art. It's like, dude, performance, like optimizing a game is a huge art. And a lot of people will actually want to know, like, sure, you can make this really cool box or this really cool robot or this really cool tree, but can you make it run? Like, will it run at spec? Like,
or bump into things or fall over or...
Yeah, it's like anyone can make a really good picture, but can you make a game? Like, do you know the ins and outs?
Bring life to it. That's the hard bit. Yeah.
And that's the big thing too. It's like making games, movies, TV. It's not just about making a pretty picture. It's got to run.
Yeah.
And it's not a pretty picture, man. Like optimizing is tough, and it takes a long time,
especially across like console generations and stuff like that as well. I mean, look at Cyberpunk.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it's tough, and the fact is too, like you spent all this time working on this really cool asset, but it's like, dude, it doesn't run. You got to strip it. Like you got to cut all this off, and then it's like, it's just a shell of what it was. But the thing is too, like, one of the things I have to tell a lot of newer artists is like, you need to remember, I know what it used to look like, and you do, but the public never will.
Yeah.
And what matters at the end of the day too, and this is where I get a lot of flack from a lot of people. So I know for a fact, no one is going to remember the art I made for a game in a few years. Even a year. Yeah. The technology is changing so fast. There's a lot of really good games coming out from big studios, indie studios, just dudes in their garage. They're doing really good stuff. People aren't going to remember the art I made. They're going to remember how they felt playing it, though. Yeah, they're going to remember the fun they had. They're going to remember the playing it on their couch with their friends. They're going to remember like how it made them feel. Yeah. But they're not going to remember like what I built. Like no one's going to remember like these buildings
you made with the glass panel or something like that. Or,
no one's going to remember. They'll kind of remember it. It's like, oh, I
buy it.
Yeah. And that's another thing too. Like, I love it when people stop to look at my art. But I also get paranoid too. It's like, is it bad because you stopped what you were doing and it's like, hey,
you look at them.
Yeah, it's like, hey, is something wrong here? Like, why'd you stop? Because you're building this art so that way people can just keep running through it. Like, you don't want to like break the suspension of disbelief. You want them to feel like, oh, this is all cohesive, natural world. I'm going to run through this and, get from point A to point B.
Nothing's sticking out. Nothing's looking like it's missing textures or popping in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the same when you do like build reviews and you're running through stuff and you're like, oh my God, look at the grass. Like it's wrong. Like, and then you'll get to the launch and there's maybe stuff you just can't fix because it's just your last minute, it needs to ship. And then you're playing the final build and you're running by and you're like, oh my God, look at it. It's not finished. Oh my God, the UVs, fuck. You know what I mean? Like the trims are like no lining up properly. There's this tiny wee seam that like you never thought, you'd ever see. And yeah, it's one of these things that these games live forever. Obviously, once you let go of them, but it's hard when you put them into the world because then you want them to stay this perfect cylindrical object that never moves or falters. But it's
absolutely. And what's funny too is like I've seen people do playthroughs of tons of games I worked on, and they go by huge errors that I remember, and it's like we just could not fix them because either something broke at the last minute, and no one knows why, or like it was just one of those things where someone decided to turn like this pillar, like, or this box, like 45 degrees the other way, and it's like, no, it wasn't built for that.
Yeah,
and
it seems at the back, fuck.
And then, but the thing is, like, no one called it out. No one complained about it. Like, in all honesty, they were too busy having fun. And granted, that's not an excuse to, to have sloppy work, but
no, but that's the main thing you really want is people to go in and have experiences and remember, who built what and all that kind of stuff. So it's common. But then it's one of these things where, I mean, that's probably been something you've learned over the years of shipping so many games. And then of course, like, talking about 343, I mean, that's obviously been the longest spanning your career. I mean, officially, it was 2012, I think you came at the studio.
So I started 343 February of 2011. And I remember it was funny. So at the time I was doing a lot of freelance work back in California. And I was just at the point where like, I'm sick of LA, I'm sick of California. Like, I just want to do something different, but I don't know what. So I remember putting my resume up on a bunch of resume sites like Indeed, Monster.com, a bunch of those sites, and then just applying.
Still not a thing.
Is it?
Yeah, no, I'm saying it still wasn't a thing even back then. 2011, it was 2014 minutes, so you were still, games jobs were still, there was other places you had to go to find them.
And I would just start applying I went to gamedevmap.com and just I'm like, okay, what's every company in America? I'm just gonna take like 2 hours a day, send my resume out, and then see who bites. Yeah. And I did a lot of interviews, got a lot of rejections, and that's one of the things too. Like, when people apply for jobs, you're gonna get rejected. Yeah. Like, it's very rare you get like multiple offers in one go.
Of course.
And it's
unless
just
you're like a superstar or something, or have loads of experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it just happens. Like, you're gonna get a no, and you can. I used to be devastated over that kind of stuff, but at that point in my life, I was like, it's just a no. And having worked at so many different studios at that point, because like I had jobs that were like a month, I had jobs that were a week, some were just a day, some were like 6 months, some were 5 months. Like it ranged all over. But because of that, I went through so many things and saw a bunch of different things. That's also why a lot of people ask me for like contract advice, like wage advice, like how to negotiate. Like I've had some pretty crappy contracts in my day. Like, I've been totally taken advantage of. I totally undersold myself like a lot. And just seeing how that happened and just, talking to people like realistically about it, like figured out what I did wrong and how to fix that. But anyway, going back to it. So I just applied everywhere. And then I remember getting the call like, hey, I represent this company called 343. They make the game Halo. And I'm like,
yeah, oh my God, washed up.
Cause prior to that, like, I tried applying at Bungie, like a few years prior to that. And, I did not do well. So I got a couple rejections, and then, I tried again, and it just, didn't pan out, but it's okay. Like, and then that's the thing too. Oh, here's a fun fact. I've taken several art tests. I have never passed one. I've never passed any art test. And
but then was there an art test for 343?
There wasn't. So like a lot of jobs, in games were with games, like if they had an art test, I never passed them. And it could be for various reasons. And like, especially too, like there are some studios where, I knew people there. And I'm like, hey man, like I know for several reasons, they can't tell me why I failed the art test. So there's a lot of legal reasons why.
Of course.
And, so I'm like, but hey man, like, do you think like you could find out for me, or maybe you could ask like, what happened? Yeah. And, and sometimes I would actually get a response back, and it's like, that's something I never would have thought of that. Like, I never would have thought of building something that way, or, I didn't think, oh, okay. So the way I presented it this way was a big red flag. Now I know that, and I won't do it again. So,
of course.
Yeah, it sucks. Like, I wish more studios would tell you why you failed, but I totally understand why they can't.
But what is the reason behind like why you can't? Is that a thing where they're afraid people will get mad, or like?
I've heard a few different reasons. Like, one of the reasons that seemed the most logical to me was, so let's say you your art test was a box,
Mm-hmm.
and all the rules were like, you need to build this box this way. And let's say you wanted to spice up the box, so you took the lid off and put it on the side, and it's resting on the box. You turn that in, and they're like, hey, you failed the art test because you took the lid off the box and had it leaning up against the box.
Right.
We didn't ask you to do that. But then person B takes the test. They do the same thing, but maybe the lid's on the other side.
Right.
And they pass, and then they get a job. And you're like, hey, you failed me because I put the box off the top and put it on the side. This guy posted his work saying this art test passed. So why does he get the job and I don't? And then that could lead to, depending on where you are in the world, that could be taken as a sign of discrimination, or it could be like, was there something else? Like, was there some kind of
person's like a minority, or like someone that's disabled, or anything like that?
Yeah, so it's just this giant can of worms. Like, granted, there's also there's other reasons too. Like, but like that's a common one I've heard over the years. It's like they can't talk about it because maybe they hired someone that did do it wrong, but they had enough in the rest of their portfolio to supersede that, or maybe this person did bad on the test, but all these people know this artist, they can vouch for that person, like, and it's one of those things too. Like, some people just don't do good on tests. Like, like it happens. Like,
I think art tests are such a weird thing. It's such a weird middle ground where if people's portfolios are good enough, I mean, it's like, just hire them. And then, I mean, like, there's a thing Gary Vee talks about where he's like, what you really need to get good at as a company is firing people. Like, never mind, like, should we hire this person, should we hire them, and think about it days and days. Just hire people. And then within like 3 or 4 weeks, if they're not hitting the mark, then just fire them. He's like, like, it seems brutal, but like, then you're giving opportunities to people that you might not, or might do better than you thought they were going to do. So, I think there's a whole mentality behind art tests are good, but then like, sometimes it's like, hire people, get them on board, and then like, if they're, within their contract, you can stipulate like, if they're not hitting the stride within, I don't know, a month, 2 months, whatever, like their first 6 months probation, then of course you can just let them go.
Yeah, I can definitely see the benefit in that. It's taken me a long time to come to terms with people have art tests, so that way no one can say they got in off of like a free ride. We all had to do the same thing. And I definitely understand that mentality of, let's hire more people and fire people if they're not pulling their weight. And it definitely sounds cruel. And that could work if you have a lot of money to blow. Because that's the thing. Like, depending on where you are in the world, I'm just going to use United States standards for this, just because it's the easiest thing for me. So, like, hiring someone full time is a lot of money, because you have to, when it's a salary, then it's benefits, then it's insurance, and then it's licensing for your programs, then it's the equipment, and then if you're in an office, like, you have to pay for that space. You have to take an additional insurance claim for that person now walking into the building. Then your business has to pay insurance on top of that insurance. So then all of a sudden, like, this person, let's say, we'll just throw out a random number. Let's say, like, I hired this person with a salary of $50,000 USD, but to hire that person full time is probably going to cost $225,000 USD. And that's just, and that's not even giving them the full 50K for the year. Like, all that money is just to get them on board. So, and then they're there for like a month or two, and then you fire them. It's like, I'm out that money. Like, I'm not getting that money back. So,
I mean, it's maybe a thing where it's like a contract position where like you're not taking on initially full time, but then, because I know engineering firms that used to do this when I used to work in engineering, where you would work initially on a contract basis as almost like a freelancer.
Yeah, sure.
And then after your probation, because contract, obviously there's a lot less legal stuff involved, like you said, with money and stuff. So you'd work contract based, and then after 6 months, if you're hitting every mark, people are like, cool, you've hit everything, your leads and everything are happy with you, director's fine. Let's organize a full-time contract and then get you involved in that way.
Sure.
Could be an option, could be a roundabout way of giving people more of an opportunity early on in their career.
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen that. And I really think that's a cool idea too. It's, because when you do contracts, it's a lot less stress on like the main company, because it's the contracting agency that's dealing with a lot of that upfront stuff. And, they're, the main company is paying the agency breaks down their fees and then pays you the rest.
100%. Was that how you started with 343, or were you straight in the door as a full time?
No, so when I started, so I was a contractor, because at the time, like, I was also still pretty young. So, and I was just happy just working. So
yeah, of course.
I was just happy, like, hey, this is, I've loved Halo forever. This is a chance. I've been trying to get into work on Halo for years. So I got in and, just kept going. And like, I originally came on as an environment artist, but so the people I worked with at Sony on God of War 3, they saw my resume come through the pipe. Right. And one of them vouched for me and he said, hey, I worked with Tim, we were there working long days, on God of War, and he's a really good guy. He's really good at tech, and I know we're looking for a tech guy, so maybe we can use him as both, or maybe you can shift him to a tech art position. Right. And so, I got pulled aside because like, hey, this person said, you're a really solid guy, but you're also really good at tech, and we need someone who can do tech. And I'm like, sure, man. Like, I'm just happy to be part of the squad. So you need to do tech? Let's do tech. So
yeah.
So most of pretty much all of Halo 4, I just did all of tech art. So there's a lot of optimization, a lot of collision stuff, a lot of LOD stuff, but then also like a lot of animation, a lot of destruction, a lot of scripting. It was really cool. Like, it was super beneficial. And then just the thing that people don't give tech artists and engineers enough credit for is like when they get something to work, and you can see it from like the artist puts all this effort into making this really cool object or this scene.
Yeah.
And then you're in the background like, okay, how can I find a way to optimize this? How can I make this animate? Like, how can I make this look cool? And then to see all the back end stuff that, no one can see the rigs you build, or no one can see the scripts that you write. But the fact that it's there and now you're seeing like everyone gets to see the end product, but it's off of the stuff you did. It's super inspiring. It's like, man, I helped build that.
I mean, you're almost like the diamond in the rough, because like tech artists, as you know, are one of the hardest jobs to hire for, because there's so few people who really do it full time.
That's the thing too. Like, I remember we had that conversation a while back. It's like, because you're asking like, hey, I'm going to have a tech artist on here. Like, what are some questions that you might want to hear or that you might want to know? And it all kind of depends too. Like, what kind of tech art are we talking about? Are we talking about scripting tech art? We're talking about building tools, talking about optimization, talking about, like rigging. Like there's a lot of, like, it varies wildly.
Shaders, Unreal stuff, real time. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. All that stuff is considered tech art. And then you can break it down further. It's like, I specialize in character tech art. So, rigging, shaders, movements, like blend shapes, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so Halo 4, I did tech art. And then for Halo 5, I really wanted to do art. Because at the time, like the rest of my history, when it came to games, I was doing tech art.
Yeah, for 90% of it, yeah.
And anything not games, I was doing environment art. And I was at the point now where I'm like, I really want to do art. And, that's where my passion is. I've been doing all these things. I want to do art. So I talked to my lead, and he goes, well, Tim, like, I get you're passionate about this, but your portfolio is not up to snuff. So, and so he gave me this task of like, hey, if you want to work on art, you still need to do your job here, but like, you just need to just work on your portfolio, work on those skills. And then, if you can show me some improvement, we'll see what we can do. Because we need to be able to make sure you can do the work. I know you can build the work, but we need you to execute all the way when it comes to art. And I was like, cool. So, I'm like, that's fair. Like, so, on my free time, I took a look at my portfolio, and my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, like, we were both looking at our portfolios, because she was also in the same boat. She was also doing a lot of tech art, and she wanted to do art as well. So we just like, let's let's look at the top modelers at our studio. So, you know, we looked at their stuff and we're like, we can do this. So we just threw out our entire portfolios, and we gave ourselves this time limit of a week per project. So we were just banging stuff out. We were doing like studies. We were just doing like smaller, like corner scenes. Like that's one of the bigger things too, just to go on a different tangent for a quick second. So a lot of people get discouraged because they try and build this big, phenomenal scene, and they look really cool, but it's so hard to do that by yourself. So we realized that, like, just because, you know, if you've done enough 3D, you realize like big scenes are really hard to do and there's a lot to manage.
For one person, yeah.
For one person. So let's just keep everything to a small corner. So this way you just have to worry about like 2 quarter walls and like whatever your hero prop is in the center or off to the side or something.
Like a diorama almost.
Yeah. So we started doing that, or we would just do like really overly complicated just assets just to show we could technically, like we were doing technical modeling. Like we knew how to build everything cleanly. You could animate it. You could render it just fine. Like there'd be no weird artifacting when lights hit it. Like, so we just did that. And then, you know, we beefed up our portfolios. Then, you know, a little bit down the line, it's like, this is really cool, man. Like it's not that, people are jaded. It's like they've given this advice so many times, and just to see people like just not do it. So the fact that, you know, one, like the person gave the advice, I took the advice and did the thing, and then kept iterating on it. They're like, this is what we needed. So then that's where I got to do full environment art for Halo 5. And they basically, the 2 leads for MP and campaign, you know, we got to pick the people they wanted. So I got picked to do multiplayer. Nice. And what was cool too was I always asked for more responsibility. Like I always wanted to be a lead, like, because my goal was to be like a lead environment artist one day. Like that was my top thing for my bucket list. Yeah. And just being able to like do all the work and then, you know, help manage like all these newer artists and then help bring them up and then work with other veteran artists, you know, just to learn from them. And then they were able to make me a lead. So I got to lead a few handful of MP maps on Halo 5, nice. Which I was super jazzed over. And that was also in the time too where I got hired full-time during Halo 5. So all my work...
Wow, so you're only a full-time employee on 5, yeah, so
correct.
You went all the way to 4 and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying too, like, people shouldn't be afraid of contract work. Like, contract works can be extended. Contractors, you know, they can work for a very long time.
It's contractors, yeah.
And prior to that, I mean, everything I did before 343 was a contract. So, because that's just all they were given in California. And I just knew that, you know, if I worked long enough, you know, and I kept working, you know, my ass off, you know, it would make it. And if it didn't, as long as I had something consistent where I could pay my bills, I'd still be happy. Like, because I was making enough money where, you know, I could pay for my own insurance. You know, I was able to take care of myself, you know, and, you know, I was able to even put a little bit in savings. Like, that was huge. Like, but yeah, and then, yeah, I did a lot of MP stuff for Halo 5, and then worked on a lot of the sustain maps for a while. Like, after we shipped Halo 5, then we had all those DLC maps, those free DLC maps that we dropped every, like, I think it was like 4 months, I think, like 4 or 5 months, something like that. I did those, and then, yeah, then we just started working on Halo Infinite. And then that's where one of those things where I wanted more responsibility, like because I wanted to keep furthering myself, and I commend 343 a lot for this. Like, I owe a lot to that company for various reasons, because 343 actually gave me the opportunity to become a better artist. They gave me chances to be a better artist and to prove I could be a better artist. And if I wanted more responsibilities, you know, they would give me more responsibilities. Like, and the fact that I even met my wife now from 343, like,
yeah,
I
which
met
is
her.
Rare, obviously. In some places, you know, it's like a whole I mean, in some places it's almost frowned upon, right? Because it's very rare that people within departments or within studios. But then it's like, yeah, I mean, I've heard so many people meeting, their spouse at games or their spouse in studios, and yeah, it's like it's great when it works because it's always like it's a double-edged sword, right? Because if it doesn't work, right, and that's the other side of the issue. Yeah,
I remember I've had that question come up a couple times. Like, what would you have done if something happened with you and Liz? It's like,
right, yeah,
you work. Like there's this like younger mindset of like, oh man, I can't. It's like, dude, you just go to work. Just go to work. Just do your job. It's okay. Like stuff happens. Like, and if it really becomes that big of an issue, like just get another job. Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's one of these things. I think it's just it's always you always hope for the best, but then like you wouldn't want to, especially because you had worked so hard to get to 343, right? You wouldn't want to have something that jeopardized that opportunity. It's I can also see why people would be very cautious about.
Sure, like there's definitely like there's pros and cons to everything. But yeah, no, it's we've been very happy, which is good. But yeah, and the people I've met at 343, like that's been one of the biggest proponents of me staying for so long. Is I've learned so much. I'm still learning so much, and even like newer artists, like fresh out of the gate, fresh out of school, or fresh off of an indie team, just seeing all their skills and like where they're coming from and like getting their mindset. And it's like, man, I could have done this and this whole time. That's wild. It's like, I didn't think about doing it this way. That's actually really cool. Like I definitely have no qualms with those kinds of people. And I think your last interview that just aired, they were talking about, like, I think Ubisoft has like this whole structure where like a senior has a few juniors and a few junior, and like it just keeps going down the list. Like,
yeah, there's a lead, and then the lead has like 3 seniors, and then each senior has 5 juniors.
Yeah.
So it's like almost a pyramid of like people, in the structure.
Yeah, and it's super cool. Just seeing their mindset, and just like I said, like just learning all these new things from them. Like, because I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room, and I don't want to be like the most talented. I want to keep learning. That's why I'm so jazzed to like see how people are doing things. Like, because I want to get better. Because I like teaching and I like leading and like getting these new techniques to help me, which is going to help them. So if they shine, I shine. So
yeah, of course. Yeah, no. I mean, 343 seems like a great place. I mean, the stories I've heard from it are always positive, and people talk about the culture there, and it's really great. And it's one of these things that it's hard, I think, for some people to see themselves anywhere else, because sometimes, like, I think you're almost the rarity in the industry where people have been at a place for a long time. Like, because you're talking now 2022, you're talking what, nearly 10 years at 343.
Yeah, going on like a little bit over 11, I think, at this point.
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, it's one of these things where you say to yourself, like, because you look in the industry now, right, and people do jump a lot, right? They maybe even finish like one project and then they'll move again, one project, then they'll move. Because you obviously spend 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years on a game, and people try to think like, I want to do something different, I want to work on something else, or I want to go indie, I want to go AAA. You move between. So that's been a thing where you've always just you've enjoyed where you were, and that's what I'm saying. It's rare, yourself. Like,
and I don't fault anyone if they want to leave. Like you said, there's a plethora of reasons. Like, and like there's some people that just get burnt out. They want to do something else, or if they're not happy. Like I've had a very positive experience. Does everyone have that same experience? Probably not. Like I can't see into other teams. I can't tell how people think. So if people are doing it because they're not happy, if they're leaving because they're not happy, that's good. Like, you need to work on yourself. Or if they want to do something new because they want to spread their wings more, like they feel they can get more satisfaction like somewhere else because they want to just try something different, that's totally fine too. Like, now, like a younger Tim, the 20-something Tim had the mindset of like, how could you do this? Like, you're betraying, it's, why would you do, this is such a cool place. Why would you betray this? And like, the older I get, it's like, I mean, some people just want to do something else. Nothing wrong with that.
I mean, we talked about that because it's public knowledge now at this point, but, Sparth left recently and he's now moved on to another company. But I think it's just at one point, it's not even that you're upset. Like, you probably love where you work, but you just want, you just want to change the scenery. You just want to walk in a different building than the same building, because the same building can just get to you every time. And you just want a fresh door, a fresh set of people, new faces.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, just seeing how other people work, just a different kind of culture and mentality. Like, that's totally cool. I'm like, and it helps you grow. Like, and the thing is too, like, since I had so many jobs, like, because I worked in big studios, I worked in people's garages, I worked in people's houses, I worked from home. Like even before, like I got to 343, and it was like just seeing so many different people and just getting so many different experiences was huge. Like, and like I've even recommended people too, like if they're not sure about staying at their current job, it's like, well, why don't you just look at trying something else? Like at least just see what's out there. Like it's okay. Like I'm not going to be someone that's going to be like, no, you should always stay where you are. You like, if you don't want to, you don't want to.
Never leave. Yeah.
It's like, if you want to go out and take a look, go take a look. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of people are scared though. It's like, I want stability, but I also don't want to be chained down, which is interesting.
It's a hard balancing act. Very hard balancing act to have.
Yeah. So it's, you just kind of have to do it.
Especially with kids and a family and a wife. It's like, your priorities change. You have to think about what's best for your family, not what's just best for you. And it is difficult to take the leap, because if you want to leave for 343, for instance, and go do something else, then it's like you're not just having that conversation with yourself. You've got to think about your kid, and then also talk to your wife about how's this going to impact us as a family. Like, do we want to leave Seattle? It's a whole thing, that you've got to try and work through. As opposed to when you were younger, like you said, and you were single, you can just pick up and leave and move. So
yeah, because I remember having that conversation with my wife. It's like, man, it'd be really cool to work on a Final Fantasy game. And like if this was like 10 years ago, it's like I'm willing to pick up, move everything to Japan, learn Japanese, at least enough Japanese to get by. But then it's just like I was saying, like it's just being at 343 was such an enriching experience, and it still is to this day. Like I'm still very happy, and I'm still learning stuff to this day, and like I'm still getting challenged every day, which is cool. That's
it's definitely landed with a thud, and it has garnered great review scores. So I mean, it's good, right? Because I mean, there's always the what if, right? What if it sucks? What if it gets fucking 6 out of 10 or 5 out of 10? And what do we do then? But like, it's done well. So I mean, that's a positive for the whole studio, right? Because then it's like, great, fantastic. We've hit our stride again. We're making great games. So yeah, it's just like, where do you go from here? And obviously, like Halo, especially the way games are built now, almost as services, especially multiplayer, right? There's a whole roadmap of like the next year or two, like with DLC content, seasons for the online stuff. So yeah, there's probably enough there to keep it going long enough that you can, it's the hardest part is done now, and it's just like almost like maintenance. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's not difficult. Whatever you're doing now, of course, it's always going to be challenging, like you said, but at least you've kind of stuck the landing initially, right?
Yeah, and the thing is too, like when you ship a game or just ship a product in general, that's not like the end goal. That's like the starting line. So it's like the goal is to build like this really good game that lasts for a long time, even if there was like no DLC. Like let's just say it was just a straight single player game, but the fact that like people keep buying it, people keep talking about it, you've built an ecosystem out of the effort you put in. Like that's the continuation you want. Same thing with like launching a console. Launching a console, that's not the finish line. That's the start. Because you want to make an ecosystem where people like the product, they keep putting money into the product, and they want to expand it more and more. So like that's the goal. Like
especially with Game Pass, because like at this point, like I don't know how the fuck anybody's going to compete with Game Pass at this point, because they have bought every studio on the planet at this point. I mean, like even the whole Activision deal, buying Blizzard and Activision and that whole ecosystem with that, like, and 343's been part of that for a long time, and Microsoft Studios, and yeah, it's a whole thing. Like it's, I mean, like we talked about this early on, right? When we were talking on the server, but when I left college, or I was leaving college, or just getting to the point of starting to apply at university, I was watching The Sprint on YouTube, which is all the documentary behind the scenes for Halo 5. And like there was a whole world back then, even then looking back on like how that was built and how that inspired people, and how that moved people forward. And it was funny even like looking at that series, and right at the end, I forget the guy's name, is it Phil Spencer, who's the head of Xbox now, but he was in giving the speech at the end of you guys shipping Halo 5, and at that time I think he was only like one of the heads of maybe like the studios or something like that. It wasn't even like running Xbox at that point. But to see how far all the companies have came, and him and you guys, and just like the whole explosion of like 343 and what it is now, and yeah, it's crazy to think how far you guys have came in the space of what, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it's been a ride, man. It's been super exciting.
Did you do anything? Did you do anything cool for the Infinite launch? Were you guys out there drinking and shooting guns in the air?
So because it was
Oh,
COVID
during the pandemic, of course,
yeah.
right? Of course, during COVID, yeah.
Yeah, so it was COVID. So people masked up. We had our launch party, at the studio.
Nice.
But yeah, no, it was basically just it wasn't really a launch party per se. It was more like, man, I haven't seen you in months. Like,
yeah,
it was
last November, right? So it was November 16th, November 18th, something like that last year.
Yeah,
right?
so it was just wild just to see people again, because
yeah, can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, just like everybody, like every other business, it's like once COVID started hitting here, it's like first it was like, remember when COVID was supposed to be 2 weeks? Remember that?
Oh yeah, then 2 months, then maybe 2 years.
Yeah, and then it just kept going, and it's like, oh man,
yeah.
But yeah. So
I've seen some gnarly launch parties, and I'm sure Infinite would have been pretty epic as well. It was walking about and stuff.
It was pretty casual for the most part. It was cool just seeing everyone. There was some food. There was a couple ice sculptures that I saw that was pretty cool. Like
nice.
Was
that in the Redmond office? Were you guys in the actual office for that?
Yeah, granted, it wasn't. It's not like when people think ice sculpture, like, man, it must have been like this 6 foot thing. No, man, it was like something, cool centerpiece, for like a cool table.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was cool.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. Like, I think even like getting through COVID and shipping that also was a challenge in itself, right? And
oh yeah, dude, it's the whole mindset of like what we were talking about earlier in this was like, just the camaraderie of like just being next to each other. I could turn around and talk to my guy and talk to my team, and we can vibe off each other. You have to rebuild all that again online, and it's like it takes you back to like if you were ever on a mod team or making
right, working
remotely like that, just with people all across the country, to build something. It's a lot like that, but it was also like, you had people that were working in games, 15, 20 some years, and they've never had to do that. So, and then, thankfully, Microsoft is, they're a pretty tech savvy company. It's hard to believe, but this little indie company called Microsoft.
You're the small startup, yeah,
small startup called Microsoft. But yeah, no, I mean, it took a bit to get all that worked out because there's just a lot of security stuff you got to figure out. There's a lot of logistics, and then it's like, do people at their home, do they have the right equipment? Like, do they have a good internet connection?
Do we have to send them a computer? Do they need a laptop? Do they need a Cintiq? Do they need a desk?
Yeah, I a lot of that stuff, but yeah, I mean, it took a while, but once we got in the groove, man, it was good.
That's also the unsung heroes of any game studio was the IT department.
Absolutely. Like we could not have done any of it without them. And they were
just making computers work and running the right software and Jesus Christ updates and
and our IT team, like a networking team, man, they were going crazy. Like they did a lot.
Yeah.
And in such a short amount of time, and it worked pretty darn good. So,
yeah. Shipping stuff out in boxes, making sure it all goes to the right people, making sure it gets to them in time and it's all safe and secure and
and then especially too, like a lot of people, like, and I don't blame them at all. I mean, COVID sucked, man, and it gets real lonely. Like, and
oh yeah, no, I mean, I've lived through it, man. I graduated in the tail end of 2018, and I had that 1 year where I kind of grinded, done some stuff, went to events, and then as soon as I came back from LA and Lightbox, COVID. So like,
and like for the people that don't have a significant other or even a pet, like, I mean, like some people move back home, and it was really good that like Microsoft 343 in general were like, do it. Like we need you happy, we need you healthy. So that's what's important right now. And
100%.
And they were really good about that. So a lot of people, ended up going back to their hometowns, and some people, literally flew back across the pond. Some people, went back to international. They went back, international, the UK, Europe. I mean, and they were still, it sucked because, your days are kind of weird just because of like the time difference, but
right? Yeah.
But I mean, we made it work, and it was, we shipped a damn good game. Like,
yeah. I mean, congrats in that sense. I mean, like, it's been one of the biggest challenges I think the game industry has faced over the last, I don't know, since it started. Like, they've never really had to deal with it. Nobody has in human history at this point. For us especially, So yeah, I mean, at least it shipped, and I think a lot of the cracks that showed early on was just the results of trying to adjust to COVID working and getting things optimized when everybody's sitting in their own house. So yeah, guys, I definitely applaud 343 and you for working through that. So yeah, congrats on that. And here's to the next project, whatever that's going to be in the future, whenever that's announced, and whatever's going to be the whole next thing. But yeah, I'm sure your hooks are still very much in Infinite and making sure that shines and does well. And the endeavor that is, the multiplayer and everything. And you guys have still got to launch co-op and everything. That's still a thing that's got to happen as well at one point. So I mean, yeah, there's probably still stuff that you guys are day to day still working on. So yeah, it's a busy train to push along, but I'm sure you guys are enjoying the journey. And like you said, you get to be challenged every day and get to go to work with awesome people. So
yeah, dude, it's exciting times, man. Speaking to that, like, some topic I was trying to think about. Dang, what was it? We got so into our conversations, I lost track of some things, but no, it was cool. It's
I mean, like at least he's working through the pandemic, working through with the teams. It's got to have been difficult, and yeah, you came at the other side of it relatively unscathed because, like you said, you shipped, and even though you faced a delay, like most studios do, not uncommon. I mean, people were kind of losing their shit, but I think it's very common for people to delay games now. It's almost expected at this point. So, but you guys still managed to push out AAA quality remotely. So, yeah, you guys have done well in that sense. So, yeah, definitely congrats. That cool? Did it come back to you? What are you thinking? Was it still in the head?
No, but is there anything else you want to talk about, man? You got any, like, just general question? You got any topics you want to hit, man?
I think, I mean, the thing I would say is we're heading for the 2-hour mark.
Sure.
So for me, this is definitely one of the longer episodes, which I've enjoyed, which has been great. I've definitely loved everything we've talked about. I mean, this is one of these things, right, man, when you come in the podcast, is that when you talk to industry professionals, like, you could sit here almost for 10 hours, right? Because there's so much stuff to talk about. And you talk even at one subject. If we just talked about even like Blender and Maya, and that whole debate that's going on, we could be here running like a whole 10-hour stream, just talking about software, because there's so much to talk about and so much nuances between, which one to pick and stuff like that. And which one to focus on.
Speaking to that, if anybody wants to hear that conversation between me and Gordon talking about Maya, Max, and Blender and Lightwave and all that, leave it in the comments.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, but there's a whole, I mean, I think definitely what we can say is we'll get you back on. I think there's going to be room for, we could even do, like you said, we could do a whole episode on software. Like, that could just be a thing on, tools to learn right now, which ones to focus on, which are the best for you, ZBrush, Max, Maya, Blender, Substance, Substance Modeler, fucking Medium on, what's the one, Nomad on iPad is now a thing as well. And
oh yeah. That's cool, man.
So many. Even now that Procreate has a 3D painting feature where you can actually texture and paint.
Yeah, dude, that thing is sick, man. Like, especially like even like an older like iPad Pro can run it, and then you can actually like just paint on top of your OBJ. It looks pretty decent.
Ridiculous. Yeah, I just got like an iPad Pro. So this was my recent endeavor was the 2021. So the most recent one, the cool. 1 terabyte, which I got because I was told the 1 terabyte came with the 16 gig of RAM versus the 8 gig of RAM. So it's
yeah, dude, that's cool.
And it has the M1 chip in it as well. So like, I mean, Nomad's ridiculous, man. You can get something like 4K renders in like 10 seconds. It's crazy, absolutely crazy.
Dude, that's how I felt like when people were playing around with Midjourney and like they're getting like these super sick, like high end, like AI renders.
Oh yeah,
and I'm like, in less than a minute, and I'm like, dang, man, that's awesome. Yeah.
AI is even that's its own thing, right? I mean, I've seen people recently have podcasts on just that subject. Like, we just interviewed Scott Robertson not long ago, and his whole shtick was on, AI, VR sculpting, 3D modeling within concept, like design. there was a whole thing where, because he's trying to write that third book, right, which is design, how to design, because he's got how to draw, how to render, he's going to make how to design now. And intro into like VR and AI, he was like, yeah, the whole thing is fascinating. There's so much depth just to even that subject, and we had a whole conversation on just that one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a whole route you could go down where you're talking about just one thing, and it's crazy. But yeah, we will get you back on, and I'll try and get a feel in the comments and in the Discord for you guys where you want us to go with the next conversation, because I'm not opposed to getting people back on multiple times. I'm more than willing. We've had many 2-3 timers that have came on and expanded. But we got most of the bulk stuff out, right? We talked mostly about your career, your early career, working in different contracts, freelance, getting into 343, what you've done over the Halo games, working in different stuff in Halo 4, Halo 5. So I think when we come back to talk next, we could really zero in on a subject like software or discipline or motivation or stuff like that, or how to, maybe a hard surface, and how you see the difference between even that, because I know obviously there's hard ops in Blender now that's totally making rains into things. And
oh yeah, man. Even going back to like AI stuff or even NFTs, there's a lot of controversy over both, but it's also like you're looking at it from like there's a lot of like places in the world that don't have it as great as like a more first world developed country. Like there's a lot of places
100%.
like so. Like that's why like I totally understand the stuff with NFTs and crypto. Like I get the bad, but there's also like if you think about it from this perspective,
it's changed some people's lives.
Yeah,
100%.
Absolutely, especially people where they don't have banks or they're
exactly.
they're sadly
the only form of currency was crypto.
And sadly they have situations where they're getting all their money taken away for various reasons, and crypto's giving them life. Like it's giving them.
Well, I mean, talking about even like south of the border with Mexico and Brazil, and even just Southern America, like a lot of the guys who are working down there who work for literally sometimes pennies, and to see them now thriving and launching their own stores and launching their own NFT ranges and making a bunch of money, like thank God, like I mean, anything to help people down there.
And just like with AI stuff, like there's the gray area of like is this too close to somebody's art? Like should you be getting like profits for it? Like and then it gets in that gray area of like, well, if we start doing that, what about photo bashing? Like because if you open up if you open up one, you got to open up the other, and like there's.
I mean, photo bashing in a sense is used for production in a sense that the thing you photo bash to use for content will probably never see the light of day because it's just to convey an idea. But then with NFT AI stuff, it's like, well, some people are using AI stuff to make money off. So it's like then that's almost a grey area where, like where does that? Because I mean, I've never seen somebody photo bash something for profit. I've seen some people photo bash stuff to make art, to make concepts, especially within production. Yeah.
Well, you could probably pick a handful of those art books even right behind you. There's probably some photo bash in there, and it's like
100%.
And then it's like, well, so the person you took the photo from, like, should they be getting paid? Do they even know they got this stuff? Like, it's this real great. It's like there's no great answer, and I totally get the understanding of like, if this is stealing, if this is looking too much like my art, or this is starting to encroach on stealing my art. I totally get it. Like I'm not taking that away from anyone. Like I get it. Like you worked really hard on this, and all of a sudden, like
somebody else just took it.
Like a robot like rebuilt it, and now it's so similar, but it's different enough where that person could probably sell it and make money off of it, but you didn't. Like
even photo bashing. I mean, you're careful in a sense that you're not ripping like whole images, right? You're almost trying to take road textures, rocks, a couple of trees maybe, and even if you go to like stuff like was it photobash.org, was that the website years ago? I think it's still going. Matthias, I think, runs it, and it was like he would make packs of trees that were already pre-cut, so that if you wanted to use trees in photos, you had like copyright free packs where he took the photos, the trees were his, or no, trees aren't his, but he took the photos of the trees and cut them out for that specific reason. So then like he's the photographer, he's the end goal, so like you can use that stuff for production. But it's a very photo bash is still a very gray area.
It's we can get into all that kind of stuff at another time. But we have many opinions and many.
I know. I mean, like I said, there's a whole. We could even just do a whole episode on just like 3D modeling. Like we've never really dived into like subdivision and building stuff for production. Like there's a whole conversation just for that. So we'll definitely talk after the podcast and we can see what ideas we come up with and go for there. But thank you for coming on.
Sure.
Thank you for giving up your time. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, dude, this was fun, man, and it's actually nice being able to talk to you and actually see you, because we mostly just had chats over the last few years, and
Of course. Yeah.
and it's actually nice just to see your face and actually like be one to one with the face, because I've seen your podcast. It's like, there's the guy, that's the guy. I know that guy.
I recognize him.
I recognize him. But now it's like, oh man, I'm actually talking to the Gordon. So.
I had that when I was at Lightbox, that people would talk to me and they would say, I recognize your accent from somewhere. And I'm like, I run a podcast. I'm like, that's it. I've listened to your podcast. I know what you're talking about. So yeah, like there's one of my friends, Ernie, who is a 3D catch artist. We're good friends now, but he actually, as he was going through college, listened to my podcast back in 2015. And when he graduated and started talking to me, he was like, dude, I was such a fan of your podcast back in the day. And like, it's weird, we're friends now. I was like, oh yeah, it's crazy. So, but yeah, it's weird how there's people who like went through school listening to me and are now working in the industry. Even that time, one of my friends just told me that like there was an entire department in a AAA game studio. I don't know if I can name what one it was, but they were all sitting at lunch listening to one of my podcasts. So it was like, it was really fucking, it just blows my mind, man, that people enjoy this shit. So yeah, I'm really thankful for that. But yeah, again, thank you for coming on and
for sure.
Your time. Yeah, definitely we'll do it again. For guys who have listened to this point, thank you for listening. I know this one's definitely a longer episode. We're into 2 hours. But I'll maybe try and snippet some parts of these up and also put them up as we just individuals. If you've got any questions for myself or Tim, I'm sure you've got plenty for Tim. You can leave them down in the comments below. If you guys are listening on any of the audio versions, so Spotify, iTunes, or Google Podcasts, anything like that, you can check out YouTube. You can see our faces. You can see what we're talking about. Make our mouse move, and you can leave comments down below, and we can feed them back into Tim. He can answer them hopefully on the page, and I'll also leave his details down below. So his ArtStation or his contact details if you want to get in contact or talk to him about anything. I'm sure he's pretty open to that as well. And yeah, there's also the Discord link below. If you guys want to jump in the Digital Artcast Discord specifically and share work there or feedback or want to suggest any guests or any future things you want to see or hear. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys can leave a like or a comment and a wee subscribe, it would be great. It would help us out. We've just passed 100 subscribers, so thank God for that. It seems like it's the first 3,000 took forever, then we got 100 in a month, so I'm hoping that continues. But yeah, check us out on our different social media accounts, including myself and Tim, and we will see you guys later. Thanks for Tim coming on. Thanks for you guys for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye, guys.
Yeah.